Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sprues Roving Model Filming Studio location, the cab of my truck. So tonight's installment is going to be the next venture down memory lane to speedrun the history of the Revell Model Company. Now this one involves a lot of twists and turns with a lot of different companies that you wouldn't think would have anything to do with any kind of a model making adventure, but it's a equally as long and equally as interesting story, just like the AMT Round 2 story that we did last time. So let's dive in and take a look at what came together to create the company that we now know today as Revell. Okay, thanks for tuning in again with me tonight, everybody. Um, this time we're going to take a look at the rather interesting history of the company that is currently operating under the brand of Revell. Now, a lot of fans of this company, I guess, there are many of them, and people tend to enjoy the quality of the kit that they are producing and may not understand just how long that this entity has been around for. So we're going to take a look at all of the various companies that ended up having a part in what would become the Revell of today that we all know and love. And I can speak from experience in noting that over a quarter of my own personal collection comprises Revell kits of various types. So let's dig in, shall we? The very first company that we have to take a look at is Renwall. Now, in the late 1930s, the exact date is kind of a little fuzzy at this point in time. Renwall was founded um, as a lot of these model kit companies actually end up starting as just a plastics manufacturing contractor. They didn't initially start out as any particular manufacturing goal, I guess. They just saw a need for products produced in plastic and set up shop to contract out with whoever wanted to make some stuff. So the feller that started this all was named Irving Lawner, and he started this in Mineola, New York. Now, you see what he did there? His name is Lawner, and he named his plastics company Renwall. That's pretty clever right there. So over on the other side of the country, in 1943, a company called Precision Specialties was founded in Hollywood, California, by Louis H. Glazer. And again, this was just a plastics molding firm. One of his primary customers was actually Revlon. Now, I could not find any kind of a logo or corporate identities for Precision Specialties, so I just kind of made some fancy text and overlaid it over a picture of the Hollywoodland sign. I felt it was kind of appropriate. And on the right, we have a Revlon ad from the period that shows some of the products that Precision Specialties was making, such as the cases for lipstick dispensers, nail polish dispensers, compact mirrors, that kind of stuff. Anything that Revlon sold that was made of plastic, starting in 1943, it was made by Precision Specialties. 1945 saw the founding of Monogram in Chicago, Illinois, by Jack Besser and Bob Reeder. These guys were former employees of a company called Comet Kits. The first things that they started to make were balsa wood kits of ships and airplanes. Also in 1945, Renwall started making a line of plastic dollhouse accessories that were apparently rather successful and is one of the major claims to fame of the company that used to be Renwall. In 1950, Precision Specialties contracted with Gowland and Gowland to produce their Highway Pioneers kits under license. They decided to kind of play around a little bit with their biggest customer, Revlon, with their name. So they came up with the name Revell. Now, the Gowland Highway Pioneers kits are notable in that they are the very first all-plastic automotive models ever produced. They didn't sell overly well in Europe. So Gowland & Gowland was a UK-based company. They didn't enjoy a whole lot of success in Europe, but Revell contracted with them to start producing them for the US and ended up being a runaway hit. And then also in 1950, Aurora Plastics Corporation, again a contractor for making whatever plastic products you wanted, was founded in Brooklyn, New York by Joe Giammarino and Abe Shikes. By 1951, seeing the way that the business was going, Precision Specialties rebranded itself as Revell, and they abandoned any other product lines that they had. So anything with Revell or any other customers that they had, they closed down all of those contracts and exclusively went into model kits. 1952, Aurora started making their own products under their own brands. Their first model kits were actually copies of Hawk products. And thankfully, in 1952, Hawk wasn't as litigious as Monogram would be with IMC in the 70s, and this was just chalked up to being part of the business, and they were allowed to keep doing what they were doing. 1953, Monogram abandoned the balsa wood project and started making plastic model kits. And then in 1953, Aurora moved to a new facility in West Hempstead, New York. This was a period advertisement here that I found, and this would be their facility until there was no more Aurora, but we'll get to that later. Revell Inc. was created in Venice, California in 1955. So from this point forward, this was kind of the glory days, I guess you could say, of the company that was known as Revell Venice. And this is where you would get a lot of the highly detailed but somewhat finicky to assemble model kits that are in the Revell catalog and are still being reissued to this day. Also in 1955, as a strange twist of fate, Revell collaborated with AMT to create Buick promotional models. 1956, Revell Plastics GmbH was founded in Bund, West Germany for European production and distribution. And then in 1958, Revell of Great Britain was founded in Pottersbar, Hertfordshire, England, for production and distribution within the UK specifically. In 1958, Revell began producing plastic model kits. In 1961, Monogram built a new facility in Morton Grove, Illinois. They hired real car customizer and hot rod builder Daryl Starbird to come on as a stylist to design some new products, and they created some model kits of some of his cars that he had built. Not to be outdone by Monogram, in 1962, Revell hired Ed Roth as a stylist, and they also became a publicly traded company. In 1964, Aurora Canada was founded to produce kits for sale to Commonwealth nations. So this is a little business tactic that used to exist. U.S. manufacturers would create a Canadian subsidiary to be able to take advantage of the royal preference that existed among Commonwealth nations, wherein products could be purchased and sold between Commonwealth countries without any extra import duties that would be assessed on products that were manufactured outside of the Commonwealth. So therefore, if you were a U.S. company and you wanted to do trade with Commonwealth nations, you would go and create a Canadian subsidiary and make your products there, and then you could sell to the whole rest of the Commonwealth. In 1965, Revell purchased a company called International Raceways, and they set up a division to plan and produce slot car tracks. This was a business segment that was on the grow at the time, and Revell wanted to take advantage of it. They produced replicas of actual existing racetracks, such as Monaco and Sebring, and a Grand Prix track. Now, this company was not really geared towards an individual hobbyist, per se. This was a really big operation, so that if you were a hobby store or a slot racing club and you wanted to have a large competition track in your building, you would contract with Revell Raceways. They would come design your track, build it, set it up, and everything at your location so that you could have competitions. And then in 1966, Aurora also goes public on the New York Stock Exchange and became a publicly traded company. Unfortunately, by 1967, Revell Raceways was a complete and utter failure. So they closed that division up. They posted a $438,000 loss, which was in 1967. So if you adjust for inflation into today's dollars, that's over $4 million that they lost chasing after this pipe dream, I guess you could say. 1968, Monogram, which had been having some financial troubles, was purchased by Mattel. In the 1970s, the German division of Revell started producing kits all on its own, completely independently from Revell Venice. Whereas prior to this point, their product catalog was items that was developed by the head office in Venice, California, and they would just kind of resell and distribute it. But they started to get a handle of the market in Europe and hearing some feedback from their customers of stuff that they wanted to see. So they started to develop their own products. In the 1970s, Revell was starting to have some money troubles of their own, and as hopefully a quick way to make some money, they decided to lease or sell their mold catalog to whoever would pay for it. So if you were a model company and you wanted to make a kit of something that Revell had, you would pay them a fee, run the molds, and get your product. In 1971, Aurora was purchased by Nabisco. In 1972, a new plastic models division was created by Lesney in the UK for the Matchbox brand. This was a completely separate division from the die-cast cars, and it was an effort of Lesney to try and diversify their business model. When they first launched, much of their catalog is completely new tooling of their own design. Being a startup model company with the backing of a large company, they already had lots of money to develop these tools. But their 1:144th scale line of aircraft was actually reboxed Revell Germany molds. So again, a strange partnership between Revell and another company to produce a line of kits. In 1975, what was left of the Revell mold catalog was purchased by Revell, and Revell, as a company developing plastic models, ceased to exist. In 1977, Monogram purchased Aurora from Nabisco. So Monogram, which was owned by Mattel, had the money to be able to purchase the Aurora mold catalog from Nabisco. By this point, Aurora had been in a lot of financial difficulties and wasn't really succeeding as a company anymore. So they shut down by 1977, and this is the infamous train accident story that a lot of folks may have heard, where the Aurora mold catalog was loaded onto a train and going from Long Island in New York to the Monogram facility in Illinois. And along the way, the train derailed, and a lot of the molds were ejected from the rail cars and landed in a field. It was basically farmland, and a lot of the molds. It took a while because a train derailment is not exactly easy to clean up, so that they were exposed to weather and kind of been buried in the dirt a little bit for a while, and a lot of molds end up being damaged. Some did get repaired by Monogram, the ones that they felt were the most financially viable, but there were some that were just deemed a total loss and were scrapped. And so some Aurora products have never seen the light of day since then. In 1978, Lesney purchased AMT, leading to co-branding AMT and Matchbox model kits. In 1979, Revell was purchased by Seiji, which is a French toy company. Now, the details are a little bit fuzzy. It's kind of hard for me at this point to try to figure out what exactly happened to Revell of Great Britain, which was the subsidiary in Potter's Bar. Beyond this point, it seems that Revell of Great Britain stopped being a thing. By 1982, Lesney unfortunately was following on hard financial times, which seems to be a repeating refrain in this story, but they entered into receivership. The bulk of their assets were purchased by a company called Universal Toys. In 1983, Universal Toys sells the AMT model division to Ertl. In 1986, Mattel sells Monogram to Odyssey Investment Partners. And later in 1986, Seiji sells Revell, also to Odyssey Investment Partners. This creates the new entity that many of us are going to be familiar with, of Revell-Monogram. So Revell Inc. of Venice, California was merged with Monogram Models of Morton Grove, Illinois, and this created the Revell-Monogram Corporation. Revell, as an independent entity, ceased to exist. All of its molds, tooling, and design was transferred to Monogram's second plant in Des Plaines, Illinois. But at this point in time, Revell had a larger distribution network and global brand recognition, as well as the comparatively successful German branch. So Revell became the primary brand of the new entity, even though, for all intents and purposes, the new company was pretty much just Monogram. From this point on, kits were co-branded Revell-Monogram in North America, while in Revell, where in Europe, Monogram didn't have as much of a presence. Everything stuck with just the Revell branding. In 1990, Universal Toys leases the Matchbox Plastic Models brand and sells the tooling to Revell of Germany. Some Revell and Monogram kits are sold under Matchbox branding. In 1994, Revell-Monogram was purchased by Hallmark as part of its Binney & Smith division. Yeah, the guys that make the crayons. They were all part of one big company. In 1998, Revell of Germany's license for the Matchbox Plastic Models brand expires. Subsequent reissues of Matchbox tooled kits are just branded as Revell, since they already owned the molds. Figured it was might as well just keep running them. So in 2001, Revell-Monogram was purchased from Hallmark by another investment company, Alpha International. And then shortly thereafter, in 2002, Revell-Monogram was purchased from Alpha International by Gearbox Toys. In 2006, Gearbox Toys spun off Revell of Germany as its own independent company. In 2007, Hobbico, which had been the largest distributor for the Revell-Monogram brands, just purchased them outright from Gearbox Toys. As part of this transaction, the Revell and Monogram co-branding ceases, and then we are left with just Revell. But then, after a couple of years of absence, Monogram returned again in 2009 with a snazzy new logo for reissues of classic Monogram kits. Also in 2009, Atlantis was founded by Peter Vetri and Rick Del Favero, who were the owners of MegaHobby.com, one of the first online retailers of plastic model kits. So they set up shop in Deer Park, New York. And then in the next year, in 2010, Atlantis began producing model kits, primarily by leasing molds from other companies, partnering with resin manufacturers, and I think they even had some paper models to start out with. In 2012, Hobbico purchases Revell of Germany, reuniting the US and European branches together after they kind of did their own thing for 6 years. Unfortunately, in 2018, Hobbico goes bankrupt and its assets were liquidated. This is fairly recently. A lot of us probably remember when this happened, and led to a lot of uncertainty about what exactly was going to end up happening with the Revell brand. So later on in 2018, a German company, Quantum Capital Partners, purchased the assets of both Revell of Germany and Revell USA and combined all of the operations under one umbrella in Bund. So at this point, for all intents and purposes, Revell of Germany became Revell worldwide. It was kind of marketed at the time, and I think there was another in-between company that was involved in this transaction where it was basically Revell of Germany bought itself kind of thing. So the status of the operation in 2018. Quantum Capital Partners owned the Revell assets. And by this point in time, you had all the molds were spread out all over the world. So the biggest depositories of tooling banks were in China, Poland, and the United States. So Quantum, in an effort to try to streamline their acquisition, I guess you could say, they sold any of the molds that were in storage in Elk Grove Village, Illinois, that Quantum did not think were going to end up be a profitable endeavor for them to be able to produce. They sold all of those to Atlantis. And then in 2019, Quantum Capital Partners purchased Carrera, which is a big slot car RC company, and they combined the U.S. operations with Revell as Carrera Revell of Americas, Inc. in East Brunswick, New Jersey. After going through their newly acquired tooling catalog, Atlantis decided to make a deal with Salvino's JR Models of Corona, California, to sell them the Monogram 24th scale NASCAR molds. So any of the molds that were still stored in the United States ended up going to Salvino's JR Models. Now, not all of the old Monogram, later branded Revell 24th scale NASCAR kits were still in the US. There are some bodies and newer chassis that were ended up being shipped off to China, and those ones Salvino's didn't get a hold of. But anything that was still in the US ended up going to Salvino's JR Models. So this concludes our little speed run through the history of Revell. Hopefully you found this informative. Maybe there's some stuff that you didn't know. Maybe this is all old news to you. But thanks for stopping in and checking out my little story. And I hope you found this as fun as I did researching it. Thanks a lot, and see you around next time.